Welcome back to the Funding Blueprint, where we dive deep into the world of startups, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Abraham, and today we have an exciting guest joining us, Jordyn Willens, the Program Director at WEVE Acceleration. At WEVE, Jordyn plays a crucial role in supporting international growth stage startups as they enter and scale in the US market. With her expertise, she oversees the planning and execution of tailored accelerator programs, working closely with government and corporate partners to ensure startups reach their full potential. Jordyn's dedication shines through as she builds engaging curriculums, cultivates mentor and investor networks, and guides startups towards achieving their key performance indicators. Before her role at WEVE, Jordyn's career path led her to support nonprofit organizations in surpassing their fundraising goals. Through these experiences, she developed a deep understanding of working with VCs and startup founders across the globe. Jordyn's passion lies in building connections, fostering relationships, and championing professional success for women and underrepresented groups in the startup ecosystem. Today, we're thrilled to delve deep into Jordyn's journey, her insights into startup acceleration, and her commitment to empowering entrepreneurs. So without further ado, Jordyn, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Abraham.
It's my pleasure. So I want to dive deep, and I want to talk to you about, in the fast-paced world of startups, accelerators have been a prominent launch pad for many ventures. These programs offer funding, mentorship, access to valuable networks, all seemingly designed to propel a startup towards success. But with so many accelerators out there, it's important to choose wisely. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work here. So Jordyn, with your experience in the startup ecosystem, how can founders cut through the hype and determine if an accelerator is the right fit for their specific startup?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's a couple of different places that you can start when you're looking for the right accelerator for your startup. I think one thing that you really want to be mindful of when you are choosing an accelerator is your stage. There are accelerators that are designed for earlier stage startups. There's accelerators like Weave that are designed for more growth stage startups. And you really want to take into account where you're at in your journey, what exactly your needs are, and how the accelerator that you're interviewing with or that you're thinking about is going to get you, from point A to point B, is going to get you towards your goals. For example, you mentioned accelerators offer funding. Oftentimes that money is expensive in terms of equity, in terms of time, in terms of what you're expected to give up. And so looking at your current level of funding, looking at like, is this something we really need? Is this something that's really applicable to our stage? I think is a really crucial conversation to have with the team when you are selecting an accelerator. And on top of that, there are accelerators that are more generalists. There are accelerators that focus in specific industries or sectors. For example, we focus mainly in B2B tech, but outside of that, we're sector agnostic. That being said, we partner with accelerators who focus on climate, who focus on retail. So really doing some research to see what's out there and getting as specific as possible can be really helpful because you're looking at, a really, really curated mentor network as well as other cohort members who you can learn from, who you can partner with, and who can really help you grow.
Thank you for your insights on that. The startup world thrives on a mantra, right? Growth, growth, growth. The faster you scale, the bigger you become, right? Well, not necessarily. While rapid growth can propel a startup to new heights, it's not without its risks. Burnout, instability, and sacrificing long-term vision for short-term gains are all potential pitfalls. So, Jordyn, when might it be wiser for a startup to take a more measured approach, focusing on building a strong foundation before scaling aggressively?
This is a bit of a difficult question, only because I would say there's not really a one size fits all answer. When I'm looking at rapid growth versus, taking a more measured approach and maybe taking things a little bit more cautiously or slowly, I'm looking at a few different things. I'm looking at what the team makeup is, the type of funding that you have, or the type of capital that you have access to. I'm also looking at sector and industry trends. I think that sometimes we'll see companies that are trying to break into the US in what is already maybe a super crowded market. That pushes them. They have this need now to grow as rapidly as they can, despite capital needs, despite access to people or team, because they feel like they need to be the one to get it to the market first. And while I understand that mindset and I don't necessarily think it's wrong, I also think that when you are competing that quickly in a really, really crowded space, it could actually be a detriment because, you only get one shot at a first impression. And if you're trying to break into a crowded space and your first impressions aren't great, that could be completely detrimental to the health of your company. That being said, sometimes you look at industry trends, for example, like things in the healthcare space and the climate tech space where a lot of funding is going towards recently, and you're getting that momentum, you're getting that motivation to scale rapidly. I think that I've seen that work for companies as well. So again, I think there's no one size fits all answer, but when you're looking at the way industry trends are going, when you're looking at how crowded a sector is, I would use those cues to decide kind of what the best path is for your startup.
That makes sense. So moving forward to hiring, right? Recruiting top talent is vital, I'd say, for any startup success. So let's talk about your dream team in the US. What advice do you have for startups looking to hire talent in the US market?
Hiring and hiring well are very, very crucial pieces of growing a startup, especially when you're expanding internationally.
But navigating the US job market can be a whole new adventure within itself, especially for international founders. The competition is fierce, cultural nuances can be tricky, and regulations specific to the US need to be considered.
First of all, I think it's really important for startups, especially those who are coming internationally, to really learn what the labor laws of the US are and to learn what is expected when you are accepting a job offer. Because a lot of the times, what we need and the way that things work in the US are very different than the way they work in other countries. One thing that I see a lot of the time is that startups, they want to go in, they want to hire in sales, which is great, but they often go in and right away hire like a VP of sales, a director, a US director of sales, some big, lofty, fancy title that is going to cost you a lot of money in base plus commission. And one thing to note about the people in the US, we are very, very, very good at selling ourselves. We might not always be the best at selling your product. So taking on that risky, like pretty high investment is something we actually recommend startups stay away from. When you're making your first hire in the US, you might want to look into something like an SDR, somebody that is a bit lower level, somebody that can generate those leads for you, that can get you those meetings. But ultimately, the first sales are going to be founder led anyway. Nobody can sell your company like you can. So having those boots on the ground to start, maybe bringing in a customer success or a customer service rep once you have enough customers to show that, you have somebody in their time zone that can support. That's kind of how you start building your US dream team. And from there, you can start growing, you promote people, you hire bigger, fancy titles. But once you have the traction, the proof to show that, you're kind of at that space. And then in order to make sure you're attracting the right talent, I would really recommend looking at other job descriptions, other similar companies that are hiring for similar profiles, seeing what they're offering in terms of compensation, but also, benefits in terms of other opportunities for growth, for learning. Things like that can really go a long way in the US, especially where things like health insurance, medical, dental, all of that is tied to your employment. So really taking a look at how you can be competitive in the hiring process and also making sure you're not over hiring, I'd say are two big tips for international companies.
Right. So consumers today are increasingly drawn to brands that stand for something bigger than just profit, right? Startups with their agility and innovative spirit are perfectly positioned to integrate social good into their core mission. This isn't just about philanthropy, it's about aligning your business with a cause you actually care about and weaving that purpose into the very fabric of your brand. So, Jordan, how do you think startups can actually leverage their social mission for effective marketing and brand building?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, consumers are getting really smart, especially in these younger generations. So making sure that your social impact and your social mission feels authentic to your brand is crucial. I think when you're scrolling through somebody's Instagram, or I guess people advertise on TikTok right now, and you see 20 posts that are advertising a new product, and then one out of every 20 or 30 has to do with the social impact mission, it's not going to feel genuine and it's not going to make people want to buy your product based off of that. So one thing that we talk to startups about is really making sure that it's incorporated at every level of your company, in the marketing, in your messaging, in your internal messaging with your employees, making sure that everybody is kind of on that mindset. A lot of the times, the startups that we work with have kind of a climate focused impact mission. I think, especially, that's something that is really, really important these days. And, we're seeing a lot, like in investment trends, that those are the types of companies that are getting investment. Something that we like to talk to them about is having statistics to back up whatever it is that they're saying about their climate impact or their climate mission, but also just like really ingraining it into the corporate culture, into their corporate messaging, and making sure that it feels authentic.
Right. So the world of startups is often glorified for its fast pace, relentless hustle, and potential for explosive growth. But with all that excitement comes a major challenge: achieving work-life balance. All the founders out there in the world, including myself, happen to wear many hats and put in long hours to get their venture off the ground. So what are your thoughts on the concept of work-life balance for startup founders? Is it attainable?
Whew. It's important. I know that wasn't the question, but I'm going to start off right off the bat. It is so important to achieve a level of work life balance. I think that it is important for your mental health. It's important for the health of your company. If you burn out and you are the one that's keeping everything afloat, then your company burns out. Kind of going off of that, it is possible to achieve work life balance. I think in the beginning, it's definitely a lot harder as you're rapidly growing, as you're pulling your team together, as you're pouring your heart and soul into what is essentially your baby. But I think that hiring the right talent is really what allows you to find a work life balance. It's hiring people that can see and execute on your vision. It's hiring people that you trust to take the reins while you're on a vacation or taking a day off to take care of, things that you need. It's hiring people that can jump in for you when you're a person too. Sometimes you need to take personal appointments or you just need a mental health day. And I think that surrounding yourself with the right people that can jump in, that can support, and that can really execute on your vision as you see it is what's going to allow for work-life balance. I don't think it's something that comes easily, and I don't think that it's necessarily something that comes quickly, but I do think that it is possible with the right environment.
How does Weave Acceleration actually look at that? Is there anything that they do that can really contribute to the work-life balance of the startup founder as a part of your cohort?
One thing that we really encourage actually is kind of spreading the wealth, which will eventually allow for work-life balance. I do think it's a bit of a catch-22 when you're going through an accelerator because essentially you're adding on an extra part-time job on top of your normal workday. That being said, one of the things that we encourage in our accelerator, for example, we'll encourage founders to send other members of their teams to group sessions where the topic might be more relevant. For example, for a marketing session, you would send your head of marketing, or a hiring session, send your head of HR, making sure that the people on your team know what they need to know in order to execute on their jobs without so much support from the top. We also have partnered with services that offer mental health counseling to founders and mental health support to founders. We try to build into our in-person programs some opportunities for fun. It's still work, but it's opportunities to get out, to see New York, to have a little bit of fun and levity rather than just 24/7 work. Again, I think when you are in an accelerator, it's even harder to find that work-life balance, but we try to help prepare founders to achieve that after they're done.
Awesome. I want to mention as like a closing note, I wanted to ask you, how does Weave differentiate itself from all the other accelerators out there in the world?
It's a really good question. There's a lot of accelerators out there. I think we have a few key differentiators. One of the main ones is that we are exclusively working with international startups. The issues that international growth stage startups that are expanding to the US run into are not necessarily the same as startups that are founded here or startups that are just trying to grow in their home markets. So both our team's expertise as well as our mentor network and their expertise is specifically built around supporting foreign founders with US market entry. On top of that, I think that our mentor network, obviously every accelerator has a mentor network with absolutely no bias. I think that ours is pretty exceptional. We have a mentor network of almost 1,000 people that are all excited to support the startups that come through our cohorts. And our programs are really designed with the individual in mind. Of course, there are group sessions and opportunities for group mentorship, But it's not like if you come through this accelerator, then these have to be your KPIs, this has to be what you're working to achieve. The program is really designed for startups to be able to come in with whatever their individualized goals are and whatever their specific needs are. And our team and our mentors will work hard to make sure those goals are met.
Right. Many accelerators that I've worked with don't really take that individualistic approach, right? They don't really take the individualistic approach. But you're saying that WEVE does take that individualistic approach to kind of meet and talk with every single founder on an individual basis.
Exactly. We do one-on-ones with the founders every week throughout the program. We set individual KPIs to be hit throughout the program. Our programs, a lot of them are in partnerships with other entities like governments, corporates, venture capital firms, universities, cyber parks. And so they can look pretty different depending on the program. And so we'll try to set reasonable goals or KPIs depending, obviously for a 3-month program, there's a lot more that you can accomplish than in like a 2-week program, for example. But we do an individual meeting with every startup before we kick off, making sure that there's a mutual understanding of what we're trying to accomplish throughout the program.
Thanks so much for really taking the time to hop on. Huge thank you to you, the program director at WEVE Acceleration, for sharing your invaluable insights with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more enlightening conversations with industry experts like Jordyn. If our listeners are interested in learning more about Jordyn and WEVE Acceleration, we'll have their links to the website and social media in the show notes below. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time. The Funding Blueprint is produced by me, Avraham Eliayev, with audio and video editing by Jordel Beja. If you're looking for exceptional sound design or audio/video production work, then get in touch with Jordel. Our contact info can be found in the show notes.